Rob Dauster here. I got Jeff Goodman with me.
Hell no.
John Fink.
Are we still live?
Field of 68 till I die.
I'm sorry, man. I blacked out.
Randolph Children.
DJ Khaled, you know the big DJ Khaled guy?
Hands thrown up and in.
Goodman needs to be fired all the time.
Josh Pastner.
You're going to beat people straight up.
You know the deal.
They have no swag. They have no nothing.
Terrell McNeil.
From the bluest of the blue bloods to the smallest of the mid-majors.
This is Field of 68 after dark.
Hello and welcome to the Thursday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. My name is Rob Dauster.
Today's
Hello and
Tuesday,
welcome.
Rob.
Hello and welcome to the Tuesday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. My name is Rob Dauster. I have Jeff Goodman with me, and we are going to be here for the next hour live on YouTube and live on Stadium, breaking down the latest in the world of college basketball. Today, we are going to have a heavy focus on the Big 12. We are going to get an interview here with Darian DeVries, the new head coach at West Virginia, and we're going to be doing a little bit of a Big 12 offseason reset, kind of a lay of the land for the league, the winners of the offseason, the losers of the offseason, the storylines heading into next season, and some of the biggest X factors right now currently for the offseason in the Big 12. I'm also going to make Goodman pick out a breakout star and a team that he thinks is going to have a breakout season this next year, putting him to the test here in the middle of May, the heart of the college basketball season, if you will. But before we get into any of that, Goodman spent the weekend in Indianapolis. He was at the first EYBL event of the spring and the summer. And he got eyes on three of the most interesting prospects in the world of high school basketball right now. And Goodman, I think that it is fair to say, while the 2023 and 2024 high school classes have not necessarily been the greatest, and there's been a lot of question marks about what the top of the 2023 and 2024 NBA draft classes look like, with Cooper Flagg currently in college, and with the likes of Tyron Stokes, Cameron Boozer, and AJ Dybantsa currently playing on the EYBL circuit. The future of the draft circles and the draft boards and all of the NBA draft content world is going to get a lot brighter, because there are some guys that are potential stars coming down the road. You were able to see all three of those guys multiple times in Indianapolis this weekend. What did you make of them, and what did you make of the event?
First of all, it wasn't the first event of the EYBL circuit. I guess they've already played a few events while you were busy sleeping in May. AJ Dybantsa, the number one player, the number one prospect in the 2025 class, obviously from Brockton, Massachusetts, could be the second straight number one player from New England, following up on Cooper Flagg from Maine going to Duke this season. And he's electric in how he plays. 6'8", 6'9", long, athletic, skilled, just fun to watch because of the things he can do on the court. And, he's got obviously a ton of expectations on him this year. He's kind of, he went to prolific prep this past season, and I'm not sure if he's going to go back to the Napa Valley prep school next year. But again, he's a guy with all the potential, the highest of high upside, and he produces. He produces. I'd like to see him probably complain a little bit less to the officials, to be honest, and I'll probably tell him that. But when you watch the NBA, as I'm sure he does, it's easy to kind of get bad habits of that. I just don't know how many calls he's going to continue to get, and even on the EYBL circuit, if he continues to do that. But man, he plays an electric game. He didn't shoot it well from three, Rob, but he can get to the basket. He's great in transition. And his AAU teammate from the Oakland Soldiers, Tyron Stokes, who's the number one player in the 2026 class, was awesome. Awesome. And part of it when I watched Stokes was the kind of the change in his body. He's thinned out. I thought last year he looked a little bit like a George Niang type. And he's really thinned down. No disrespect to Big George, but he looks a lot thinner than George does these days. And but he's that type of player, right? Like he can make people better and facilitate. Now he's starting to make shots from three, and he's super explosive now. Like his first step, we didn't really see this that much last summer. Man, he could put in the floor and explode and he plays above the rim a lot more than he did a year ago. And then, so he's number one in 2026. The other battle is really AJ and Cameron Boozer, the Boozer twins, Caden and Cameron. Cameron's the big guy. He's about 6'10". Caden's the point guard. But Cameron and AJ are kind of in that fight for the number one spot. And it's interesting, Rob, because it's like AJ's certainly got the higher upside as an NBA prospect, but I'm not sure Cameron might not be the better college player because you know what you're getting out of him every single game. He is going to put up, I'm telling you, like he's putting up 20 and 10 pretty much every time you see him. And he's been able to step out and make threes when I saw him this past week in Indy. And they're just so different, Boozer and AJ Dybantsa, in terms of, again, the safe pick in Boozer and the guy that, man, like is just, again, explosive and far more athletic in AJ.
Yeah, I've always thought that Dybantsa was the guy with the highest upside. Even last year at Peach Jam, I thought he was the guy that had the highest upside of any player there, and that would include Cooper Flagg because of his size, because of his scoring ability, because of his shot making, because of, you watch him and just the way that he moves and the way that he gets his spots and the way that he can elevate. I've always thought that he was the best, the highest upside player in high school basketball. I'm curious with Boozer. I've seen a lot of comparisons to Paolo Banchero in terms of where he currently projects as a player, where I've thought of Boozer as more of like a rebounder and a post player that can step out and hit a jump shot, where Paolo was a guy that's kind of developing into, he's, when you say like big wings, you think of someone like a Jason Tatum or a Paul George, and he's a little bit more physical than that, but he's almost like the modern version of what a stretch four is going to be as the initiator and the number one guy. Like, I don't think Cameron Boozer and Paolo are very close and very similar in terms of how they play.
You know why they're not? Is because you can just give Paolo the ball and say, go make a play. And Paolo doesn't need any help to be able to do it. He can just put it on the floor. He's super explosive. And I think he can get his own a lot easier than Cam Boozer can. Cam Boozer, to me, is more of like the traditional, like almost four-man. I know he's going to play some five, obviously, but like kind of what you think of as a traditional old school four-man when it comes to college basketball. He's just going to rebound. He's going to score around the basket. He's athletic, but he's not going to blow you away with his athleticism and his explosiveness like Paolo does.
Give me some updates on where these guys are potentially going, right? Like, are we talking about how can Cameron Boozer not end up playing where his dad, Carlos Boozer, played, right? Like, how does he not follow in those footsteps? Is there any chance that AJ Dybantsa stays in New England for college and finds his way to a place where, that's won back-to-back national championships? And Tyron Stokes, it might be a little bit too early in Tyron Stokes, but I got another question for you about him. AJ and Cameron, where do you know anything about kind of how that recruitment is going right now?
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to come down to Duke and Miami for Boozer. That's what it sounds like. Again, I'm no recruiting expert here, but certainly talking to people at Indy, EYBL, it sounds like it's kind of a two-horse race for the top there for the Boozers, and it's Miami, which I think they live in Miami, and obviously Duke, where Carlos went to school. Dybantsa is a little different. His recruitment's very, I don't want to say unique right now, but certainly his dad Ace is kind of spearheading things with his recruitment. They've made one visit to Auburn so far, and you got to remember, again, he lives in Brockton. Bruce Pearl grew up in Sharon, Mass., so there's that connection there. Alabama, Preston Murphy, the new Alabama assistant coach, newish, coached him in AU ball before he took the job at Alabama. So I think Alabama will be in the mix too. But, UConn, I certainly think will be in the mix. But I think this is going to be one where like NIL is going to be, critical. I don't think he's going to go somewhere for like low money. Now, again, as I've said before, a program like UConn might be a little bit different, but I also think, AJ, they want AJ to be somewhere where he's highlighted and not just another dude. And It'll be interesting to see how that thing shakes out. But I still think it's a little bit early there. And then you go with Tyron Stokes. And, yeah, coaches aren't even allowed to, I think, reach out to him until maybe June or something like that. So that's super early in the process. But it was interesting, Rob, because after the game I saw on Friday night, Stokes played one of the better all-around games I've seen in years on the circuit. He was that good. Like, he did everything. Again, he's an elite passer, but he scored. He dunked over dudes. He was great in transition. He defended. He rebounded. He shot the three. He was phenomenal. And after the game, all of a sudden, you look over and you see him sitting on the bench talking to nobody, and there's like 10 reporters talking to AJ. And AJ had a good game, but not a great game, just good. And part of that is obviously you had a bunch of Kentucky reporters there, right? Beat reporters and team site guys that wanted to talk to AJ. And part of that is Stokes being a year younger and not being as far along, certainly in the recruiting process and who he could talk to. But I just thought it was interesting. Stokes is a Louisville native, by the way. So I would assume Pat Kelsey and the Cards are going to be all over him to try to bring him back home. I would think they'll be, among the finalists when it all kind of everything clears. But we're a ways away from that.
Where do you stand on what his ceiling is? Because just basically listening to you talk right there, I am preparing myself for the next 30 months of hearing nothing about how good Tyron Stokes is, how you discovered him, how you've seen him. But remember that one time when I was in Indy and he was phenomenal. I'm just preparing myself for this. So we love to have these conversations. We love to say like, ooh, but Tyron Stokes is a higher ceiling than this guy. And I literally just said DJ Dybantsa might have a higher ceiling than Cooper Flagg. But where do you stand on like how let me phrase it like this. Put these prospects into context, right? With even Cooper Flagg, Dybantsa, Tyron Stokes, are we talking about guys that are like the elite of the elite, like potential number one picks, potential franchise guys? Or are we talking about like maybe someone at the top of the 2023 class or the 2024 class where they're pros for sure, but we're not there? It's a different level. You know what I'm saying? It's a different level for them.
No, I think these guys are at a different level than the last few classes that we've seen. I think all three of them are for different reasons. They're all different players too. And Stokes, listen, as I was gushing watching him Friday night, I did have somebody tell me like, this is probably the best I've ever seen him play. So sometimes you get that too. We're not there for every game. I'm not covering him every game in high school and on the circuit. So sometimes you get, listen, I remember the first time, I saw Rowan Brumbaugh, right, coming out of the pandemic, and I was gushing. But it's true. Like we see games that sometimes are a little bit outliers, whether it's for the betterment or sometimes they play like shit and you see him and you're like, man, I've seen him play twice. And you could try to tell me that he's the best player in the country, but man, I've seen him twice and he played like absolute garbage. It's hard to get that out of your mind. So I think I saw Stokes on maybe his best day, and I want to see him more, obviously, in July when we go to the Peach Jam. But, man, just the skill. And, again, if he can make shots, and I guess his three-point percentage went from, like, it was not good at all before he got to prolific prep. And then this past year, I think he was somewhere in the 30%, 32, somewhere in that neighborhood where he became more comfortable shooting the three. If he works, man, I'm just telling you, like the skill set is really impressive.
Yeah, he popped last year too. Like he was really, really impressive last year at EYBL. And one of the guys that I am excited to see when we go down there. Let me ask you this, and we got about a minute and a half here before we got to get to break. But how important is it for recruiting freshmen right now for these coaches, right? Like obviously when you get a player like a Dybantsa or a Boozer or a Stokes or a Cooper Flagg where they can change your program for a year, like you got to go after those guys. But for the most part, I do feel like there's been a swing from the emphasis and the time that a lot of coaches spend on evaluating freshmen over 3 or 4 years and just attacking the portal and saying, this is how we're going to build our team from now on. Instead of building for a 4-year window, we're going to build for a 1 to 2 year window and just go get these guys that want to transfer. How important is it to actually be able to evaluate these dudes on the high school circuits?
So I think it'll change a little bit talking to coaches next year, or they think it'll change. and go back to a little bit more of what it was because you're getting rid of the COVID, the fifth-year kid. So, like, the R.J. Davis isn't going to be in college basketball anymore. Baycott from this past season. A lot of those guys are no longer going to be around. So they feel like the gap will shrink a little bit instead of, you're looking at it now and you're thinking, all right, top 10, maybe top 20 high school guys are going to have a major, major impact. Well, maybe it'll go back to a little bit closer to what it was where, maybe the top 50 high school kids once you get rid of all these COVID kids. Because, again, a lot of them, if you look at it last year and you're going to look at it this year, a lot of the top 50 players in the country are fifth-year kids, are COVID players. So if you get rid of them, a lot of those freshmen will kind of take their place and play more and impact more. So I do think, again, it'll start to shrink a little bit.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Jeff, and I'm going to say that I'm kind of in the camp where I think we should add a fifth-year eligibility. I don't think that this has been a bad thing, allowing players to be able to come back for a fifth year of college. Now, again, you got to find a way to be able to get the structure of the portal and the structure of the NIL in place where it's not an absolute free-for-all from the second that the first team season ends until the portal actually closes, right? Like, you got to find some way to be able to make this be any way coherent as an actual real life sport, which college basketball sometimes does not feel like it is. But I'm with it, man. Like, these 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds have made the games so much better and so much more fun to watch. And I think I would make the argument that the level of basketball right now is as high as we've seen it since probably like the middle of the one and done era, right? Just the amount of talent that is staying in college because of
Why
NIL.
not give them
around for longer? Give them 6 years. Give them 7 years.
Let them all be Robbie Hummels. Let them all be Robbie Hummels and play as long as they want.
Why not? Why not? It's the best thing for college basketball. Let these guys get 11 degrees. You know what? You want to be a doctor? Here, you can go be a doctor. You can get a doctorate. Then you can also become a surgeon. You can play college basketball until you're 32 years old if you could find enough classes to take. That's my hot take, and I knew you were going to hate it. Listen, when we come back, we are going to be joined by new West Virginia head coach Darian DeVries, who is joined by his son in Morgantown. That is coming up next. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 throughout the year. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use bonus code FIELD, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. The best part, all you need to do is deposit and bet $10 of your own hard-earned money to be eligible. Here's how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using that bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure that you use that bonus code FIELD when you sign up. BetMGM is going to have some fun offers available throughout the NBA playoffs. Bet insurance tokens, odds boost, and what I love, a nice parlay boost or two from time to time, as well as a ridiculous array of player prop bets for any sport that you could possibly imagine betting on. BetMGM is and always will be the king of the prop bet. So go download the BetMGM app, use the bonus code FIELD, and sign up today. And while I've got you, a quick request. The best way to support the Field of 68 content that you get for free is to engage with us. Rate and review the podcast. Like and share the YouTube videos. Tell your friends about us. It all helps in a world where the algorithm is king. And now, back to the show.
All right, now pleased to welcome in new West Virginia head coach Darian DeVries. And Darren, first of all, congrats, man. How's the move, the adjustment, everything gone? Or you got a new place? You buy a house yet in Morgantown?
Yeah, we're getting there. I've been at the Residence Inn. That's been my new home for the last 40 some days. But we do have a house, and we'll get to move in sometime in June. So that part will be fun to get a little bit of a sense of normalcy again.
So is it just you and the Residence Inn, and the family stayed back at Drake?
Yeah, they're finishing up school and stuff like that. And I have a daughter in high school that's a freshman that is on a traveling basketball team, so they're going to stay, for the summer to finish that up as well. But yeah, it's just been me, and I've been eating out every night. I need to do a little more exercise, and I know that. I actually went to the grocery store to like, oh, I got to quit eating out. And I came back with Tombstone pizzas and chips and dip. So I don't think I helped myself a lot there.
Yeah, those residence inns, I did it for 3 weeks during the bubble. I remember seeing you guys play during the bubble that year, and I was at the Canal in Indy, and man, it was just one bad meal after another. It does not, it doesn't facilitate fine dining or anything like that. So
No,
you'll
I
get
don't think
through it.
I don't think my nutritionist would be very happy with
No,
me.
no, definitely not. You're not. Hey, you're not shooting 41% from three right now like you did back in college at UNI. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, no
Um,
question.
why was West Virginia the right place for you? Because I know you had some other schools that certainly you talked to and that were in the mix. Why was West Virginia the right place for you at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of reasons. I think you started with the administration. I really felt like they were really on board with what it takes to be successful and very much try to help facilitate in any way they can. So that was a big piece. I think the fans and the fan support is critical. When you're at these jobs and they're hard leagues and you got to have a home court advantage and they certainly have that. It's a passionate fan base. And I love that part about it. They really care about their hoops and so that's exciting. There's support there, in all aspects, and that's critical today, in the recruiting world as well. So I think there was a lot of things that made sense, for us, and that's ultimately why we decided to do it.
I've said like it's really obviously you've been doing this for 20 plus years. I've been in it for however long as well, probably similar amount of time when we got in. It's such a different landscape right now that you take over a program and you kept one guy, right? I don't even remember who it was. Who'd you keep? Who'd you retain?
Yeah, Ofri, it was the guy that decided to stay, and then we had to start building our roster out from there.
How how challenging is it? The only good thing is with the portal, a lot of people, even coaches that are in the same place that are there 5, 6, 10 years, are revamping their roster and flipping it, where they might lose 8, 9, 10 guys. But how challenging is it to go into a new spot that you don't really know with new people, and you got to figure out the collective part, the administrative part. You got to get your staff together. How challenging is it to be able to do this as quickly as you have to? Because if you don't move quickly in the portal, you're not getting dudes. You're not getting the dudes that you want.
Yeah, I think there was a lot that went into it. Yeah, and it does take a while to kind of get your feet on underneath you a little bit. Once we did, I feel great about where we're at now, but it took us a little bit to get there. And 3, 4, 5 years ago, if you only had one guy on the roster, you're in a complete rebuild. But that's not how it is anymore. You can get a whole new roster very quickly and have a roster that's ready to compete now. So that's the plus and minuses of what we have now with the portal versus 5 years ago. It would have taken you a good 2, 3, 4 years to rebuild with only one guy. Now you can do it immediately.
All right, so you bring one key player with you, your son Tucker, and it's funny because when you got the job, I think I texted you and I'm like, "Is he coming?" You're like, "Yeah, he's in," and I was a little surprised. And only by the fact that I think Tucker's an NBA player. I really do. And he didn't put his name in. He didn't go through the process, anything like that. Talk to me about what it was like to have to convince him, what the NIL component was for him coming over. How did this whole thing work? How did your wife get involved? Take me through it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't. I think there was just kind of an assumption, from him and myself that, and we've talked about it a lot. We talked about, different jobs and stuff like that because, he does have 1 year left, and I wanted to make sure that he was good with, whatever we decided. And ultimately it was a no brainer for him too. He was coming, wherever we felt like was best. And I'm not sure his agent negotiated him maybe the greatest deal, but no, he's excited and looking forward to this last opportunity and having some fun with it.
And you bring in Small from Oklahoma State, which I thought was a huge get as well. One of the biggest portal gets around there. Having those two play off one another, does it take a little bit of pressure off of Tucker in a way from having to do as much as maybe he had to do with the ball last year?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you're going to win at this level, you need multiple guys, and you got to have a team full of guys that are, can all play well together. They're connected. I think that's the biggest key when you're assembling a roster, is making sure you're putting together a team and not just a bunch of individuals. And I love the makeup of our roster right now. I think they're all very committed to winning. They're hungry. They're ready to go out and compete. And I can't wait for us to all get started here in a few weeks as we start the summer workouts.
Is it difficult because you got all these guys? Some, I don't even know how many. You probably recruited like none of them coming out of high school, maybe one or two, I don't know, but not a lot. You recruited most of these kids from tape and probably talking to other coaches that but until they get there for summer school, it's kind of like you don't know nobody does. I mean, for the most part, but especially I think you coming from when you go mid-major to high major, I guess some of these kids are obviously mid-major transfers that transfer up that maybe you did know, but for the most part, again, there's a lot of uncertainty with what you have, other than, again, you do your due diligence the best you can.
Yeah, I think what helps though is like maybe I didn't know them personally, but our assistants did in some way, shape, or form. They either coached them or had a relationship before. They had recruited them, at a previous school. So we were pretty intentional about making sure we got the right guys. And again, I feel really good about where our roster's at right now. And like I said, I'm just ready to get to work with them. And we've had twice in my 6 years here at Drake, we had where we brought in 9 or 10 new guys. So it's not like it's something new for myself, in terms of having a bunch of new guys coming in and having them try to gel together. I'm kind of excited about that. I think when you get that, you get a lot of energy when you get a group like that, and that's always a lot of fun too.
What do you said it, again, it's different than the rebuild that would have had to happen 10 years ago if you took over a team and had to fill 12 spots. I think you're at 10 right now, you said. I don't know how many more you want to fill. I don't know how, that's the other thing. It's like, what's too many right now because of NIL and everything like that, and the fact that, I think I saw Calipari say something like he only wants like 9 or 10 scholarship players. The rest are going to be, maybe preferred walk-ons, whatever. Have you thought about that, the makeup of your roster and how you want to do it in this day and age?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody really has the right answers in terms of, how many freshmen, how many fifth year, fourth year, senior guys and guys in the, middle, sophomores, juniors. I don't think there is a magic formula right now. I think it's just, again, making sure that they kind of fit what you want your program to be about, and making sure that the pieces all connect in the way you want to play and the style of play you want to do at both ends of the floor, and then piece that roster together accordingly.
Was there a guy that you got that you felt was really undervalued, underrated in the portal? And I don't want you to say like 5 guys either. Don't give me the coach speak. Give me one guy that you were like, you know what? I think we got to steal with this dude.
Yeah, I like them all.
Here we go. Here we go.
I'm giving you
Typical
Coach
DeVries answer. Come on, man.
Yes, this is straight. You know the answer you're getting on this one. I like all my guys, so I'm excited about them all.
Even Greg McDermott would have answered that question. All right. Even Mac
True.
would have answered that question. Maybe from the golf course, but he would have answered it. All right. Well, listen, Darian DeVries, new head coach of West Virginia. I'm going to let you hang with your family. I know you're not there long. I know they haven't seen you a whole lot since you got to Morgantown. So reacquaint yourself with your family. And that's kind of the most important thing right now. But congrats. And tell your son, tell Tucker I said hello.
We'll do that. Thanks, Jeff.
Whether you are a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross-country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. Well, welcome back to the Tuesday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark. As a reminder, we are going to be here every Tuesday night and Thursday night at 9 p.m. live on Stadium and streaming on our YouTube channel here until the NBA draft. And then we'll kind of figure out what we're going to do during the summer. But in the meantime, 2 times a week, you're going to be with us, 9 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Jeff Goodman, Rob Dauster. We are going to be breaking down.
Why didn't you check in with me? I traveled the country. I drove all by myself from Boston to Indy, and you weren't worried about me at all in that drive. You didn't check in, nothing, my whereabouts, my safety.
I didn't need to check in with you. You called me literally every hour on the day that you drove. My phone would not stop ringing. Every time I looked down, it was like, Jeff Goodman's calling me again. What could you possibly want? We just got off the phone 28 minutes ago. What are we doing here? That's why I didn't call you, because I already knew that you were perfectly fine. If my phone is ringing and Jeff Goodman shows up on the caller ID, I know that you're feeling pretty good. When I get worried is when we go for a day and a half without hearing from you. Like, is this guy going to be okay? We got to make sure he's got to check in on him. Anyway, since you got me off topic, we're going to be going into a Big 12 offseason reset here. And for the next 5 episodes of the Field of 68 After Dark, we're going to be doing resets on some of the biggest conferences in college basketball. And I want to start with this. Offseason winners, right? I think we kind of know where this list starts, but I have a couple takes that I think are a little bit different than maybe the obvious ones. So we can start with the obvious ones. We could talk to Kansas and Baylor and Iowa State and some of these teams. But for you, who was the biggest winner of the offseason in the Big 12?
TJ Otzelberger. No doubt in my mind. That's the biggest winner. Like, we talk about all these like portal winners, right? TJ Otzelberger was a portal winner because he didn't lose any of his key guys. He retained, and retaining good players from a culture, from a team that almost won the Big 12 regular season title and did win the Big 12 tournament, and made a run to an Elite Eight almost. Fought Illinois there, and where were we? Boston. We were Boston. Lipsy, Gilbert, Momcilovic back, adds Joshua Jefferson, who I know is coming back, off an injury, but St. Mary's player that I thought was critical to their success, and they took a hit back. Curtis Jones back. So your top 4 scorers all back as a part of a really good team last year, and adding some pretty good pieces through the portal that kind of fit and know their roles. Man, like TJ, to me, absolutely won the portal. More than Bill Self, more than Kelvin Sampson, more than any of the other guys. Scott Drew, he won the portal because not only did he retain everybody, Rob, you know what he didn't have to do? He didn't have to shell out a ton of money in the portal, and he didn't have to work nearly as hard as those other knuckleheads having to deal with, portal and going on Zooms and worrying about everything. Like, life was pretty good for TJ Altenberger.
Yeah, I also had Kelvin Sampson written down for a lot of those same reasons, right? The guys that he lost, Jamal Shed, was obviously his career had come to an end. He's going to end up being a pro at some point. But he gets back Emmanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer, who are two of the best scorers that you're going to find in the Big 12 next year. Jawan Roberts comes back for what feels like his 37th season of college basketball. Javier Francis, I think, will take a big step forward. And hopefully Terrence Arsenault will find a way to be able to get healthy, because I'm still buying into the idea of Terrence Arsenault being a really, really good player for the Houston program. And they also went out and they added Milos Uzan from Oklahoma, a guy that we all thought was going to end up being kind of a breakout guy for Oklahoma last year. So I like what Houston has put together. Obviously, Kansas and obviously Baylor. We've talked plenty about those two programs this year. I don't think we need to rehash any of that ground we've already covered.
Are we not giving Shed enough credit here for what Houston did last season? We saw when he got hurt.
I thought about that. I thought about that, right? And what I'll say is, with a full offseason, I'm not going to be the guy that sits here and has any doubts about a Kelvin Sampson program, because we've seen them lose impact guys every single year at Houston. And we've seen them go from the American to the Big 12. And we've seen like every possible curveball, every possible those barriers that you put on the highway in between the lanes. We've seen Jersey barriers get put in front of Kelvin Sampson's team and Kelvin Sampson's programs. And you know what he does? Boom, just drives right on through them. It doesn't stop. He's a bulldozer. He's one of those construction machines, the big ones that flatten everything, that have like the big metal circles on the end of them. That's what he does. He just flattens everything in front of him. I have no doubts. Jamal Shed was awesome. I think you can make the argument he was the best point guard in college basketball this past season. I think you can make an argument, if you wanted to, that he was the best player in college basketball, not named Zach Edey. And I think that even without him, Houston is going to be just fine, top 5, competing for Final Fours and Big 12 championships without him. Houston is Houston. They're just a machine that's going to keep rolling on. You talked to Darian DeVries. I think that they've had a better offseason than people are giving them credit for. I look at what he's kind of put together on this roster, and I'm a big fan of Javon Small. I think that Tucker DeVries, when you pair him with another guard in the backcourt that will be able to make life easier for him, I think that is a great combination to put together. Sincere Harris and Amani Hansberry transferring from Illinois with, how am I blanking on his name? Chester Frazier coming over, the assistant coach from Illinois. I like what they've put together kind of as the framework for this year's team. And I do think that they are going to be able to have a little bit of an upside / long-term. Like, this isn't just a one-year rebuild in my mind at West Virginia. I'm kind of excited. I know they lost a lot from the portal last year. They probably lost a lot in terms of what they're going to have to pay from NIL with some of the players that did end up leaving that program. But I like the framework of what he's put together in his first season at West Virginia.
Yeah, I think they're going to be decent. I'm not sure they're a tournament team, but if they are, they're going to need a third guy to step up, because you know what you're going to get out of Tucker and Small. But that third guy is going to be imperative. And I'm not sure he has any idea after talking to him about who that's going to be yet. But, to me, there's a clear top tier in the Big 12 today. And it starts, to me, with Iowa State, Kansas, Houston, and Baylor. Those are your top 4. You can throw them in kind of whatever order you want. I think Baylor's 4 for me right now. I think the other 3 you can kind of – and to me, I think Houston's 3, only because their point guard play right now is still a question mark. I think you're undervaluing the impact that Jamal Shed had, not only on last year's team, but this program the last few years. I'm not saying they're going to tank. They're going to go down a ton. But would it shock me if Houston goes from where we were talking about them as a Final Four contender as more of a fringe, like top 10-ish team. And in that next tier, not the tier that we're going to talk about nationally as like a true contender all year for a national title. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what UConn does here in Houston.
I'm going to go back and I'm going to find clips of us saying the exact same thing about Houston in every single offseason for like the last 8 offseason. Like they just always lose someone and it doesn't matter. I don't care the names on the jerseys, right? Heading into the season, I'm going to have Houston as a preseason top 5 team. You could put Jeff Goodman, Rob Dauster, Trevor Valise, Dagan Hughes, and John Fanta on the back of the jerseys. And I'm just going to sit here and say, yeah, Kellen will figure it out, man. It's just what he does. I would say, we're going to talk about X factors here in a little bit, but I think there is a world where Arizona is also in that conversation for the top tier in this conference. And I would also say there's a world where those are the preseason top 4 teams in college basketball, the 4 that you just mentioned, which tells you a lot about what this Big 12 season is. And for the most, here's the truth. The single biggest winner in the Big 12 are the Big 12 fans and everybody associated with that conference because it just keeps getting better. You're going to have so many good games throughout the entire season. Biggest losers in the Big 12. I'm going to start. I'm going to go ahead and say it is the 2 of the teams that are coming in from the Pac-12 and the 2 ones that had previously been in Colorado had been previously in the Big 12, Utah had not, but it's the 2 mountain teams I think are the biggest losers here. Colorado loses KJ Simpson, Tristan Da Silva, and Cody Williams, 3 potential first-round picks, as well as Eddie Lampkin and Javon Hadley. They basically lost everybody, and what did they replace him with? A guy from Washington State, a D2 transfer, and an NAIA transfer. And then Utah, I mean, look, they have a lot heading out the door, Braden Carlson and David Smith specifically. But I think that both of those teams left a situation where they could theoretically compete for a conference championship and walked into a situation where they're going to get pounded over and over and over again in one of the toughest leagues in college basketball.
Yeah, no, I would agree. The other one that, again, I hate to question Grant McCaslin here, but I look at his roster, and they just missed on Great Osobor. They were among the final 3 for him. I just wonder if they're going to have the same shot this year without Pop Isaacs and now missing on a big-time like, they got a good roster. I'm not saying they don't. I think Grant's a hell of a coach, so maybe he can maximize this roster. But, you look at it, Elijah Hawkins, they get him a transfer from Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, they lost a ton of games there. He put up numbers. He was a great, point guard who made people better. Chance McMillan's back. They had Kevin Overton from Drake. Darian Williams back. They had Federico, which I could say that name over and over, from Pittsburgh. I just don't,
say that name over and over just to say his name.
Yeah, I love Federico. I don't know. I'm not buying this roster as a high-end Big 12 roster. Like this, again, I'm not saying they're going to finish in the top 5 or 6 because we just rolled off 5 or 6 teams that are the elite of the elite. But I don't know. I look at this roster, I'm not blown away by it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I underappreciated the value that Pop Isaacs brought in terms of being kind of a leader and a winner with that program. Like there was a level of.
I tried to tell you.
You were right. That was the one thing that you finally got something right when you're talking about the team in the preseason. I'm not someone that is going to sit here and doubt Grant McCaslin because he's just won at every single level that he's ever been at. But I mean, look, they got a lot of good role pieces on that roster. I don't know where the star is going to come from. And that's not an easy thing to replace. Along those same lines, like, can we just walk through what TCU lost last season? Manuel Miller's gone. Jameer Nelson Jr. is gone. Mike Peavy's gone. Jacoby Coles is gone. Trevian Tennyson's gone. Avery Anderson is gone. Chuck O'Bannon's gone. Xavier Cork is gone. That's basically their entire team. The only guy that they bring back is the kid that transferred from Kansas, Ernest Uday. And while I like Frankie Collins, and while I think Trezarian White is a guy that was really impressive in some of the big wins that UNC Wilmington got this past season, specifically at Kentucky. Noah Reynolds at Green Bay is going to be pretty good. They have some good players on that roster. With everything that they lost, like it feels like we're kind of entering a new iteration of what TCU is going to be, right? Like they kind of have to rebuild this thing again. And it's going to take Jaden Dixon a couple years to kind of get back to the point where TCU is, we're talking about them as a tournament team.
I think BYU, it could be similar in some ways, right? New coach, Kevin Young coming over from the NBA. They retained a couple good pieces and added some guys to the portal, but I think they're one piece away, one big piece away at this point. And I don't know, not many guys on the table. Chaz Lanier, they're in the mix with Jackson Robinson. We'll see if he pulls out of the NBA draft and they have a chance of getting him back. But, listen, I think we can both agree the job Mark Pope did last year based on his personnel was really, really impressive. And I think they could take a significant step back this year if they don't add one more key piece.
Well, yeah, I mean, they lost one of the best coaches or one of the better coaches in that league, which is, and I think that Kevin Young is going to be able to do a good job there, but it's not going to be immediate when you're turning things over that quickly. Listen, we got to get to a break. On the other side, talk about the biggest storylines this season, the biggest X factors left this offseason, and I'm making good to pick a breakout star and a breakout team in the Big 12 this season. That is coming up next.
It's time to talk about Vaulted. Vaulted is an app that allows you to store your predictions now and forever. It also allows you to challenge your friends to prove that your takes are, in fact, smarter than theirs. But what makes Vaulted great is that it allows you to keep all the receipts that you need to prove that your friends are not as smart as they think they are. With that in mind, let's roll through the 5 worst Vaulted predictions that were made on the Field of 68 After Dark this season. On November 6th, Jeff Goodman predicted that St. Mary's would make it back to the Final Four. They lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament. On November 29th, it was predicted that Arkansas would win the SEC. They finished 12th out of 14 teams. That prediction was made by Jeff Goodman. On December 28th, it was predicted that Memphis would make it to the Final Four. They did not make the NCAA tournament. That prediction was made by Jeff Goodman. On December 13th, it was predicted that Michigan State would win the Big Ten. They finished in 6th place. That prediction was made by Jeff Goodman. On December 29th, it was predicted that Miami would return to the Final Four this season. They finished 14th out of 15 teams in the ACC. That prediction was made by Jeff Goodman. So download the Vaulted app that's spelled VLTED from the App Store now and start keeping all of those receipts.
Welcome back to the Tuesday evening edition of the Field of 68 After Dark, and we are heading back to the Big 12 offseason reset. Goodman, I want to talk about some storylines, right? What was the biggest offseason storyline for you when it comes to the Big 12? It can be something team specific, it can be something conference specific, it can be something big picture, it can be something small picture. What was it for you?
I mean, I think it's just Arizona coming into the league as much as anything. Like when you told me we're doing this, again, you start looking at last year and everything, and you forget like Arizona and Arizona State. But again, Arizona, as much as anything, are coming into the Big 12, and they're coming in at a tough time. Now, I assume they're going to have Caleb Love back because I don't know where else he's going to go. So I think he comes back, and that's huge for Tommy Lloyd. I'm not all the way in on Caleb Love, but I know they need him. I know they need him badly. So I think that'll make him competitive at the highest level here. I don't know if they win the league. I mean, they could still, again, they could finish 5th in the Big 12, and it wouldn't surprise me at all this year. Because, again, how are you cracking those top 4? I just think it's the strength at the top and the power at the top of this league right now that is going to make the Big 12 the best basketball conference in America next year. And I don't even know who's second.
Yeah, to me, I think one of the biggest storylines was that the conference kept their coaching talent. And by keeping their coaching talent, they were able to find a way to keep some of these teams that have finished near the top of the league in the league, right? Like we saw Kentucky open. We saw Louisville open. We saw Michigan open. We saw some really big jobs open, and Jerome Tang's still in this conference. TJ Otzelberger still in this conference. Scott Drew was still in this conference despite trying to be wooed by Kentucky. And part of the result of that has been an increase in NIL budgets, an increase in the ability of some of these programs to be able to go out and get players out of the portal. So it was, to me, the biggest storyline was kind of the like Kings stay Kings situation here in the Big 12. And not the least of which was, we saw Baylor spend some money on Jeremy Roach and Norchad Omier, right? And we saw Kansas State go out and get a guy like a Doug McDaniel, who we're going to talk about here in a second. But Kansas, man, like Kansas went through a season which was probably the toughest season we've seen Bill Self have in a long time with the Jayhawks. Now he went out and not only kept Hunter Dickinson and KJ Adams and DeJuan Harris, who was like 3 of the 4 studs that they had last year, but he went out and he filled out the rest of his roster with a bunch of guys that are going to end up being really, really good pieces there. In terms of this season, I think the most interesting storyline that we're going to get throughout the year in this conference is going to be Iowa State, right? Because they were a team that kind of came out of nowhere, returns everybody, and it's one of those ones where we see this from other programs in the past where it's like, okay, well, you're pretty good and you bring everybody back and you don't really add more pieces to it. So how much better are you going to be next year versus some of these other teams that have reloaded and retooled? And now, since they had all the offseason buzz, are going to end up getting more hype. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. I mean, who knows, right? It works last year. But I love Lipsy. Do they have those like high-end pros? Now, who does? That's what I keep going back to. Not a lot of teams have them. Those guys generally are gone after a year if they're that good. But yeah, I think we've seen it happen enough lately, where these teams bring back everybody. 2 years ago, it was Carolina. They fell flat. Last year was Michigan State. They fell flat. Can Iowa State come back and pick up where they left off, or is it a kind of a new year and they lost momentum? And I don't think the culture will suffer at all. You're just interested to see how they come back with kind of the targets on their back instead of sneaking up on people all year like they did last year.
All right, so I have X factors for the league. I have 2 guys written down. For me, the biggest one I think is pretty obvious, right? It's Caleb Love. Arizona brought in some good pieces in transfers.
That's number 2.
Okay, what's number 1 for you?
Milo Suzan, for sure. Like he's the key to me. He's the biggest one because like Caleb Love is still what he is, Rob. He is what he is. He's not going to change that much. He changed from, year one. Yes, he definitely made strides. But Caleb Love is still what he is. We don't know what Uzan's going to be at Houston. And if somehow he turns into a top 5 point guard in the country, then yes, Houston has a chance to win the whole thing. If he's more of what he was last year at Oklahoma, they're probably, like I told you, they're a second-tier team nationally. They're a 10 to 20 team nationally that will need some luck and some help to get in the equation for a Final Four.
You're out of your mind if you think Houston's ever going to be a 10 to 20 team nationally with Emmanuel Sharp and LJ Cryer and Jawan Roberts on that roster and Kelvin Sampson coaching them. My point was more whether or not Caleb Love actually comes back to school for the X Factor part. Just because, like, with him, then I think you can tell yourself a story. Yeah.
Again, where is he going?
Out of college. He's been there for 4 years. Like, I think he's probably back too, but until he's back, like, we don't know that he's going to be back. So to me, that's the biggest X factor. I got one more for you. Doug McDaniel at Kansas State, right? We saw how good Jerome Tang can be when he's got a point guard that can go out and be an absolute difference maker, right? When he had, why am I blanking on his name from 2 years ago? Marquise Noel. Yeah, when he had Marquise Noel running the show for him 2 years ago. And he tried to replicate that last year with Tyler Perry, and it didn't quite work as well with Tyler Perry and Arthur Kaluma and all those guys. Doug McDaniel is a guy that when he was allowed to play at Michigan last year, showed some flashes of being very, 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 very good. but he was also in a program that was about as dysfunctional and conflicted as any program that you would have found in college basketball last year. And he still managed to average like 16 points and 5 assists, right? I'm very, very curious to see what Doug McDaniel can be playing for Jerome Tang, playing with in an offense where they're going to kind of put the ball in his hands and say, go out and make plays for us, go out and win games for us. I think Kansas State has a shot to be a tournament team despite everything that they lost because they brought in Doug McDaniel. And I understand how crazy that is when you bring in a guy that was a high volume, kind of a low efficiency dude from a program that won 8 games a year ago.
You know who I want to see? I'm not sure he's an X factor, but I just want to see him for everything he's gone through. Mikey Williams, UCF freshman coming in. You know, obviously he was highly touted. He's been through some legal stuff that hopefully has been cleared up. Was supposed to go to Memphis, didn't make it there, and now hopefully will end up at UCF. And I'm just curious to see how that pans out.
Yeah, I can't believe he's actually going to make it there. I did not think that we would ever see Mikey Williams playing college basketball.
Well, everybody's getting paid right now. Why? I mean, Mikey Williams has been paid for however many years.
I was more referring to spending as much time in legal trouble as he has over the years. All right, give me a breakout star in this conference. Who is going to be, and you can define it however you want to define it. I got one guy specifically in mind. I'll let you go first on this one, but who's going to be a guy that we end up talking about more than you think, than people realize nationally that we would be talking about?
Well, before we get to that, I know we're running short on time here at the end of the show, and I don't want to get through this show without talking about this team. And you were going to ask me breakout star and then breakout team, or a team that maybe is undervalued. We have not mentioned Wes Miller in Cincinnati yet. We're at the end of the show. We have not mentioned them. And I did it on purpose because I knew I was going to talk about Cincinnati at the end of the show. But what he's done, I mean, Day Thomas, Skillings, Lukosius, Jizzle James back. I don't know if CJ Frederick will ever be healthy, but Bendango back. He adds Connor Hickman, a key piece who could shoot it. Dylan Mitchell, terrific talent. He gets late. Like, this team, Rob, this team could crack the top 5, the Big 5, as I think we'll call it at the end of the day in the Big 12. They could crack the Big 5 with that roster.
I 100% agree, and that the reason why I made sure to mention a breakout team here and not just a breakout player and not just the guy, the player part of it. I really do think that Cincinnati is going to have a really, really good season. Dan Skillings is better than I thought he was when he got there, right? Like, he's going to be really good. I love the combination of Day Thomas and Jizzle James in the backcourt. I think Jizzle James has a chance to be one of the breakout performers in the Big 12 this season. But like, and here's the thing about it. Wes Miller is, I do feel like he's underrated as a coach, and we're finally going to have a chance for Tyler Hansborough's hype about Wes Miller to kind of live up to the performances that we're going to see out of him this year.
Even if Wes loses 25 games, Hansborough is still going to be saying he's like a coach of the year candidate. It wouldn't matter. Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think that they like? Is there a real chance to win Big 12 here? Or are you saying like we're looking at like top 4, like they could be the Iowa State this year? Yeah. Crack the top 5. To me, if you're Wes Miller and you finish in the top 5 of the Big 12 this year, and he's probably got his heights, his sights set higher than that. But to me, again, I think this roster, he retains enough. Again, for me, it's like the blend, right? He retained enough. He brought in a couple key pieces. I'm a huge Dylan Mitchell fan. And again, Hickman can shoot the shit out of it. That helps. So I love Cincy. All right. Can I answer your question of now your breakout star?
Yeah.
I'm just, it's hard to find one because in this league right now, like they do, the key teams return most of what they have back. I'm going to go with Krivas from Arizona because I think there's a big hole there. There's a big hole with Ballo leaving. I just think Krivas is going to get those minutes this year. Super skilled, played hard, needed a year to adjust to coming over from internationally. So I'm just trying to find a guy who's got the ability to make a big jump from being there a year ago. And I don't know who you're going to come up with, but there weren't a ton of options in this league because of retention.
Yeah, so I have another Arizona guy. I think it's obvious because they're going to be a really good team that's going to have shots available. But I'm going with Jaden Bradley. I think that what we saw from him late in the year, his ability to get to the basket, I think he's a really nice complement to Caleb Love when both of them are playing well. And I'm going to throw one more at you. It's not necessarily a guy that is going to be a breakout star in terms of his production, but I'm in on West Virginia becoming a tournament caliber team. And I think that Tucker DeVries, being the coach's son, being a guy at West Virginia, being someone that I think will average like 17 or 18 points per game there, I think that we're going to be talking a lot more about Tucker DeVries than we did this last season when he deserved to be talked about for what he did at Drake.
Okay. All right. But breakout star. I mean, he was the Missouri Valley, player of the year. Give me somebody that is going to break out that we don't really know about. I might go Terrence Arsenault if he's healthy at Houston. I think maybe the best thing for him is watching and learning. It just depends to me on how healthy he is.
Achilles, man. Achilles are brutal. I really feel for him. He was on my list last year. Like I loved him. I thought he was going to be so good coming in with a like an offseason working under Kelvin. And just when you have an Achilles, man, it's rough. It's rough. Injuries suck. But listen, this has been a breakdown of the Big 12. I think we hit on most of the big storylines, the big teams. I do like how both of us had the same idea where we weren't going to say anything about Cincinnati until the end to pick them as a breakout team. So that tells you what you need to know about Wes Miller and the Bearcats heading into the season. But the Big 12 is once again going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm not going to tell you guys who we're going to be talking about on Thursday's episode, but I promise you that league and that conference rundown is going to be just about as intriguing and maybe not for the same reasons as the Big 12. So from now on, or from here on, Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, 9 p.m., Field of 68 YouTube channel. You can find us on Stadium. For Jeff Goodman, for our producer, Trevor Leese, my name is Rob Dauster. We'll see you guys again.